Hi everyone, I'm Marsha McDonald, and I'm an interior designer and an architect in training. There's a journey there. You're watching Student Perspective.
Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to A Student's Perspective, the weekly series that connects students with designers, manufacturers, educators, industry professionals, and design media celebrities to hear their stories on just how they've gotten to where they are now. Through our conversations, we connect the past, present, and future of design to show just how much we can learn from each other to grow towards our fullest potential without prescribed limitations. Think of A Student's Perspective as a weekly design lecture series from the student's point of view. A Student's Perspective is a division of the nonprofit University Hall of Innovation, whose goals are to connect students with the design industry through design challenges and mentorship, and a collaboration with the Marywood University Interior Architecture Program in Scranton, Pennsylvania. All interviews can be found in their video format at www.astudentsperspective.tv. For more information or sponsorship inquiries, please contact University Hall of Innovation at gmail.com.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of A Student's Perspective. I'm Gabriella, and today we are so excited to be talking to Marsha McDonald. I wanted to first ask you, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you were inspired by architecture, when you started getting interested in architecture, all that.
Sure. So I've done both throughout my life, but I started architecture when I was 13. I was in high school and I was trying to figure out my life, as we all do. And I said, well, what am I good at? So I evaluated my skills. I knew that I was a creative, and I did something very unconventional. I found out about architecture. I said, I love buildings, I love interiors, I love spaces. And I said, well, if I'm going to be an architect or if I'm going to be a designer, I need to work for an architect. So I took out the phone book and I called a few architects, and I actually got a job at 13 working in an architect's firm, and we're friends to this day. I call him up all the time, and he's a good mentor. And yes, and this was in Jamaica. I'm actually from Jamaica, so
okay, awesome.
And I moved here to do my master's.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so interesting to see like how you develop those connections so early on in your life. How would you have any advice for students who might not have as much exposure to architecture in the design world, like even in high school at those younger ages, how there might be opportunities to learn more and like reach out to people like you did? Because I know we are much more connected with social media and everything today, but for you, I guess it must have been even harder because you actually had to call all these people. But do you have any advice in that realm?
I did, and it turned out that he was, at the time, he had just finished his stint as the dean of the School of Architecture in Jamaica. So it was just really completely a fluke. But he's a good friend. Definitely I found one thing that has been constant with most people in the industry that I've spoken with who are in interior design and in architecture is that they figured it out when they were in high school, middle school, that they really wanted to be in the field. You have a few people who didn't jump in, but most people decide in middle school and high school. And I will definitely say that look at really what you're naturally good at. If you are creative, then, this is the industry that definitely fosters that. If you're a techie, this industry fosters that too. So I would definitely say be intentional in finding out. Definitely you have access to social media and the internet, but that's well and good. But like what we're doing now, we're having a conversation. So find people who are in the industry and just ask a bunch of questions.
That's such good advice. What would you say your niche was when you were younger, looking into, you're saying we have to discover what we're really good at and then go from there. What would you say are some things that you were especially interested in the beginning?
Fun fact, I'm a history buff.
Oh, cool.
So I'm a really good Jeopardy contestant. If anybody's out there, just that led to a few things we'll talk about later. Yeah, so I got really interested in historical architecture, and in fact that was my first job that I had when I left college. I connected with a historic preservationist, and she was doing a few things in Kingston at the time, and she says, "Oh, Marsha, you can draw." And I did a lot of site surveys and drew buildings and drew details, which really set me up for some of the things that I do now, which is I got really interested in architectural millwork. I spent a few years working in the kitchen and bath industry, but not just designing kitchens and baths. I did like custom libraries and even in the details that you see in millwork and banks and designing those spaces, and then of course the architectural aspect behind it. So that led me on that path, and regardless of wherever I've worked or encountered, I've ended up doing like custom libraries and offices and custom theaters and things like that because of that love for architectural detailing.
Awesome. Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your journey from so you were from Jamaica, and then could you talk a little bit about your schooling, where you got your degrees?
Yes. So at the time, there was only one school of architecture that spoke English because, in the Caribbean, and that was in Kingston, Jamaica. So I attended that. I did my bachelor's there. And then when I moved to the US, I did my master's at Florida International University. So FIU, yay, Miami, which is really great because at the time they were really jumping into innovation and technology and parametric design and all the stuff that I didn't really enjoy doing. but the fun thing about that program is that it was in a culturally diverse setting. And so we met people from all the different Latin American countries, the Caribbean, and of course, Florida itself.
Awesome. Yeah. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how maybe you were able to bring like your culture into like your initial designs, what you designed today. I'm really interested in hearing more about like what Caribbean design means to you and what that looks like.
Yeah. Here's the great thing about the Caribbean is that everybody ended up being in the Caribbean at some space. So we are really a multicultural, diverse community. So I had friends who were Indian, Asian Indian, from China. Their families were from China. Of course, Europe, Africa. So there was a diverse look, introduction to the cultures. And so we got that opportunity to learn a little bit beyond, modern architecture, Le Corbusier and Mies van der Rohe. So we stepped beyond just understanding, those design masters and architects. And we also looked at, African architecture. We also looked at Asian architecture, Japanese architecture. And then out of the Caribbean itself, because we are so culturally diverse, there were some solutions that were more, focused more on the climatic aspects of it. So of course we looked a lot on tropical architecture. And I know a lot of people look at the Caribbean as a great place to go on vacation. But there's a lot of really wonderful pieces of architecture there. And in fact, the architect that I ended up working for, he was very much interested in geometric design, but it was more organic. And so he created a geodesic dome, and that was his house. And it was very much connected to nature. It had a lot of glass, a lot of wood. I think if you were to find something that was close to mid-century modern, that was that homage to some of the 1950s, and then looking at some of the climatic aspects of it, and then some of the historical aspects of it, then you can kind of start putting things together and have some of the elements of Caribbean architecture.
Yeah, that's so interesting to see like the contrasting styles kind of come together and reflect like how it's so multicultural and that there's all these different ideas. And this sounds like an oxymoron to me when you say like geometric organic design. Talk a little bit more about like that coming to the unity of styles that people might not associate with together.
And I like that word that you just used, the unity of styles. I mean, one of the things that I've constantly have to explain to my clients is that styles, there are so many different styles. And when you're trying to design something or ask a designer to, just design it in modern style or in this style, one of the focus that I've always tried to get from my clients is their personal style, their cultural style. What is it that they want? What is it they feel at home with? And then what modern technology or modern look that they want to incorporate. And if it's a home by the beach, and I've designed a space by the beach, but the client was very much into Zen and wanted to have that infusion of coastal. So instead of going, something that was too harsh, it was very soft and muted and beautiful, and so that they could, enjoy the water and elements of wood and water. So.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Something I ask a lot of designers that come on the podcast is how you best relate with your clients and how you can kind of gauge their story and design best for them. Do you have any advice around that?
Yeah, I had a client. She was from Ghana, and I do this quick exercise where I try to kind of get from people what they want, and their perspective. And I said to her, just go on, just Google, find some images, and tell me what you like. Tell me, how you want your space to be. Give me a few words. And she brought it back to me. It's a quick exercise, and she brought it back to me. And the image, her words were bold and dynamic and daring and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, I'm so excited because, she's very much into, people, and she's very outgoing. And then she's from Ghana, so she has a great cultural background. And then she brought me these images that was like farmhouse style that was from Texas or something. And I said, so this isn't you.
Something's not adding up here.
Right, I'm like, because when she comes out, she's coming out in her fuchsias and her golds, and she's like, and very vibrant, and she, lights up the room. And I said, I hope you don't get offended, but I'm going to throw away all of these images that you just gave me and just worked with the words that you gave me. And I came up with a mood board based on some of the things that I knew she loved doing. And, it was all vibrant, golds and yellows and with some hints of oranges. And she loved it. She's like, oh, this is so me. And, I love it. And there's a time when you listen to your client, and then there's a time when you just say, no, this isn't true. So, and this is why it's so important to have these conversations. To work with your client is to communicate with your client. And some of us get so bogged down into, I need to give you this great image, I need you to, see my presentation, but we don't have a conversation with our clients. We don't take them out to lunch or to dinner. We don't go meet the family and find out that, they have like 3 dogs, and, we have to incorporate a dog space, or they're from Africa or Asia or India, and they really love their to have an homage to home, even though they're in this new life. So there's just so many different elements that you do have to pay attention to and have that conversation.
Yeah, this is such a good point. And like totally immersing yourself in the client's life, and also having that intuition where if they don't exactly know what they want, you got to be able to kind of gauge what you think they might like. And then she ended up loving what you put.
She did. She did.
Awesome. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about When I was looking at some of your work in the past, some presentations that you've done, you talk about AI and how AI can increase our productivity and creativity. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your approach with AI, since that's becoming a really big thing recently.
Yes. So here's the great thing about AI is it's able to generate ideas. So it's the ideation process, the concept process that all designers, all architects are very familiar with. We all go to Pinterest, we all Google, we all do our research. So it's not that big of a stretch to learn that if you can describe a space very well and create that prompt or that input that would guide this new tool to generate some ideas or to generate some concepts. I can definitely say that what AI cannot do, and this has been my research and my just journey over the last few months in just understanding, is what AI cannot do is think for you. AI cannot create the design workflow and show you how to implement that to move from ideation stage to a construction realization stage. And so we get all excited with our new shiny thing. The latest software came out. For me, at the time when I was in college, it was Revit. We were all doing drawing by hand or doing AutoCAD, and then Revit came out, and oh my God, 3D, and changed the game. I look at AI in that same fashion. So there are top architects who have already incorporated it in their workflow, and that's what it is. It's a tool. So you can, I'm thinking about, this space, and it needs to have this color palette, and it needs to, maybe be in this period or in this style, are great ways to use AI. Saying, I want the building to be as if Frank Lloyd Wright designed it or Zaha Hadid designed it, is not a great way to use AI. Because then you are not being, in my estimation, not being ethical, because you are copying somebody else's style. But if so one of the things that I've done is I've said, I love the tropics, and I'm infusing this, and this is my color palette. I'm looking at this particular type of space, it's an interior space, it's a living room, it's a kitchen. And so I describe it, and get into some of the details the same way we would do if we were coming up with an idea or concept, right? We're looking at mid-century mod. We want the color palette to be, more on the moody side. So we go browns and our blacks and our wood and rustic. And those descriptors that we would use to put together our visual concepts is the same descriptors we would use to input in the generative AI. So I love the fact that it is just another tool. And I think if we think of it that way, then we can incorporate it in a more efficient manner and in a more ethical manner. But if you're telling me that you grab somebody's image of the internet and you're copying this particular person's style and then you put it in your portfolio, is not great, But and the great thing about it is that all the other tools are catching on. I know this is a bit long, but all the other tools are catching on. So if you've generated a concept, an idea, I always say, do not throw away the prompt. Don't throw away the descriptions, because that would now be incorporated in your presentation. You just expanding it a bit. We're working with this color scheme. We're working with this style. We're using these materials. We're thinking of this time period and infusing it into our design. And then we take that and throw it into Photoshop, Illustrator. If we're still in Revit, there's even a Revit plugin that takes your design, and you can add your descriptors, and it would take your design and then put it in different settings. So there's so many things that's happening now in the world of AI that's great. The caveat is that we just have to be ethical about it as well.
Totally. This is such an interesting point with the perspective we take on it, because a lot of people today are kind of worried about, all right, is this just going to replace humans. And it's such a good point how you're saying, like, it's all about how we use it. It's a tool that shouldn't be abused. Rather, it should help us to be more efficient and spend more time on the things we want to, more time being creative, and allow that to be a tool for our efficiency. So that's a really good point.
Absolutely. And I see it even looking at how we work, and ways in which we work. And I in 2020 afforded that for us too, is that we started looking at, we don't necessarily have to be in the office all the time. Maybe we can have a little bit more of a work-life balance instead of being tied to the computer. I think what the AI is also doing is allowing us to rethink how we do things. And it's not for, don't get on it, and this panic that is happening. It's more, it's just another tool, it's in the arsenal of a designer. It won't replace your creativity, your perspective, because you're the secret sauce. I love saying that because I love to cook. Yeah, you are the secret sauce. So it's really is your perspective, your way of thinking that you infuse in anything that you design, and it's the same for AI.
It doesn't replace human ingenuity.
No, it does not.
Well. So speaking of tools that help with our efficiency, what are some other ways, maybe some advice you have for students looking to be more efficient with their projects, or how you are more efficient in the projects you do today? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I used to teach. I used to be a professor at FIU as well. And I see the frustration that happens, because in this world of architecture and interior design, there's so many options. And it's so difficult to try and figure out what your client, what your professors, what are they looking for? And I've always found that if you come with your strong point, your perspective, your view, and if you are looking to be the next champion for climate change, or looking to be the next champion for adaptive reuse, then state your position and focus on that. Like, everybody knew when I was in school that I was the history buff. I was into historic architecture. So I was not going to come with this rhino parametric architecture or parametric design. That was not me, but I came with, the research, the history, and then it infused my design, and I had a reason for it. So I think once you have grounded yourself in your point of view and your perspective, then it becomes easier to select the right tools. So, are you going to do Photoshops and AutoCAD and Revit and Lumion, or all the different, again, they're tools. And you don't have to, and SketchUp, you don't have to be versed in every single thing, but you just have to decide. Like for me, I focused on learning SketchUp because I love the feel of that hand-drawn look. And SketchUp was one of those tools that really got me close to that. And I could get that feel of something that was, hand-drawn, a little bit of history, and yet it could still generate my lines, and I could jump over to Illustrator and do my quick diagrams and say, this is my circulation, this is my volumes, and these are my spaces. So the efficiency comes with just being grounded in what you want. So you need to kind of know what the end goal is, and then you can make the decisions as to what tools will get you there. And I'll tell you this much. I never got flacked for not selecting some tools at my other class, and to be honest, we did. We had the Rhino amazing designs that make you question whether or not you're a designer. We all have those tech people and tech buffs and who are really good with that. But I knew that if I could always just tell a good story, I could always support that with my design, and then I could be selective in the choices of my tools, selective in the choices of the design and the diagrams and the sheets that I put out, and present well. Because that's the other aspect of it. You also have to be able to talk about what you've done in a very say it again. You have to be able to communicate what you've done and present well.
Definitely. That's so encouraging too, because I feel like a lot of times students get trapped in the mindset of like, I have to be good at everything to be successful at this. And like, really, it's about finding your niches and what you're truly good at and using that to your advantage. That's a really good point. You talked a little bit about work-life balance a little bit ago, and I know you're a mother, you have children. So could you talk a little bit about how balancing work and your family looks like for you?
Yeah, I had to make some decisions. So I did step away from architecture for a few years because interior design at the time provided that flexibility. But I'm seeing now in the industry, which is what allowed me to go back, is that, just as today, I was able to stay home. Everybody now has their laptops and the software on the laptop. So you didn't have to, you're not slave to a desktop. And so that portability was really good. And so I made decisions that, and I'll tell you this much, I have a mentor, another mentor, and she was one of the first women that I worked with as a female architect. And if that inspires you, find the people who have that background that would encourage you along the way. And she sat us down, she was very intentional to hire, us young architects, young designers. And she sat us down and she says, if you want a family, go and have a family. Don't let a career stop you from having that work-life balance. Because her generation, a lot of the architects at the time chose not to have children, they chose not to get married. And I know a lot of architects who are in their 60s and 70s, especially female architects, who are not married. And because, my children are her grandchildren now, because she never had children and she never married. And a lot of the women in her generation who went to school in the 60s, 70s, when, it wasn't as supportive, they never married or they never had children. And so I listened to her. And so when the opportunity came and I had my family, she then looked at me about 2-3 years ago and she says, okay, now you have your family. What are you doing with your life? And I said, oh, and she's like, go get your license, girl. And so this is the importance of having conversations with, the professionals and having conversations with people who are in the industry, because you hear their stories, and you get wisdom.
Totally. That's such a good point. Yeah. And now speaking of license, you talked about how you're in pursuit of your license now. Could you talk a little bit about that, what that's looking like for you?
Yes. So I, for the last 15 to 20 years, I had my own firm. I am an interior design. I do have an interior design firm. And so I put that on hold for a bit. I still have clients who call me and it's like, Marsha, where are you going? I'm not calling anyone else. So I still have them. But to become licensed, I had to go and work under a licensed professional. And I waited until the climate was better, where I had flex work days. And so I actually work for a firm, a large firm actually, which is pretty great. And so they're all over the US. They have a few different offices and locations. And the great part about it is all the things that I learned for the last 20 years were really very important for me just to get back in the field. I felt that I had to start all over, and they're like, no, you don't have to start over. So I mentor the junior designers in the office. I show them my Revit skills. I feel like such a professional now. But beyond that, I show them how to efficiently work. You don't have to make 100 mistakes to get it right if somebody just tells you how to do it the right way the first time. And then the other thing is that I get to see this industry evolve to embrace women, mothers, diverse people, from all different races. And it's becoming now this family, this community. And when you go to High Point, or we go to an AIA meeting, it's now everybody has become a little sweeter and wanting to encourage and support each other. And so that was one of the reasons that I went back. And two, the other thing is I actually spent all that time and money getting my degrees, so let's get to the end.
You're like, I'm finished what I started.
Let's get to the end goal, and one of the encouragements that I actually had was I applied, I think in the last year, a lot of organizations and schools and really became more supportive of all of us achieving our dreams and achieving our goals. We realized that life is too short, and let's go after our passions. And we got supported with funding, and I applied for a scholarship. I'm way past my, and I was competing with everyone from AIA. And what they did was they just gathered enough money and they gave out 34 scholarships for individuals to
Amazing.
do their exams, to do their license and sit their exams. And it was very encouraging to me, because what it said was, whatever point you are in your journey, we're still here for you, and go get your license. And so that's my journey.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's the exact word I was going to use, encouraging. Like, it's so great to have a community like that you feel like you can go after your dreams and keep accomplishing what you want to, having that support around you. And also how it's not a linear path, and so many, like, everybody's story is different, and this is such a good example of this. Something that I do to kind of wrap up every session is ask people who come on the podcast, what's one piece of advice you would give your student self if you could go back and tell your student self something? It's a hard question. It's a loaded question.
It is. Because I one of the things I struggled with was whether or not I was good enough, whether my point of view was valid. And there could be, there were different factors that I was dealing with at the time, but emotionally, I didn't have as much encouragement at the time that I would have liked. And so I doubted myself. And I said, oh, well, maybe it's not as important. Let's just get through this. And that's one of the reasons I left. But one of the things I would definitely tell her is you matter, and your point of view matters. And even though you felt like people were telling you that, oh, because you were this, or because you were this, you're from here, or this is that, it doesn't fit within this space. Your point of view is not like everybody else, and it's important for you to have a voice and speak it, design it, visualize it, and pin it up, and be proud of what you have done and what you spent time doing. And so I would encourage her to keep going and don't ever stop. Keep going until you've achieved your goal.
So good. Such a good piece of advice, because it is really easy to get lost in everybody and everything and feel like your opinion isn't as valid or important, but it's so true. Like, architecture is such an interdisciplinary field, and there's so many approaches to problems that we take, and especially going back to like what you were saying with, like, especially multicultural, where you grew up, what you bring to the table based on that, like, that everybody has a different experience and everybody has a unique solution to the problem. So that's such a good piece of advice. And I love talking to you about how just reinforcing like how important it is to develop these connections with people who've done it before, developing those role models, and also just bringing your own unique spin to design and finding your niche. That's super important. So thank you so much. For everybody watching, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and share, and join us next week as the conversation continues from a student's perspective.
We hope you liked this discussion with the design industry from a student's perspective. Please like, share, and comment, and stay tuned for more inspiring conversations to come.